Okay, folks, looks like it's 12:15, so let's get this show going. My name is Sarah Smith. I'm an attorney here at Beresford Booth. Much of my practice focuses on estate planning, and I'm here to talk to you today about estate planning for your pets. Short story, I was driving home some years ago and listening to the radio, and the DJ comes on and says, it read some article, Seattle Times perhaps, which stated that Seattle has more pets than children, by a significant margin, in fact. That's just, actually, I think it was dogs specifically, come to think. So that's not including cats, gerbils, rabbits, horses, anybody else that may be considered an important member of your family. So when we're talking about estate planning, this often comes up. How do I make sure that my pet is taken care of? Particularly when you have a pet that might have more complicated requirements or more expensive needs. So, as with all things, I always like to start the conversation from what are your goals? What do we need to consider when we're looking at creating this estate plan that's going to take care of the people, and in this instance, the pets, who you are trying to provide for? So a couple of things to consider. First thing, what does your pet need? Are you trying to find a home where they're going to get walks every day and it's real simple? It's a sweet golden retriever who just wants to be fed and scratched every day. Or do you perhaps have a pet that's going to require somewhat more specialized care? A horse, a sugar glider, perhaps a more exotic pet, where as much as you love your friend or family member, you can't just give them this this individual. Does the pet have any health issues, things that might require attention, or pets with longer lifespans, right? A tortoise, forgive me, can live up to 150 years. So how do we plan in a way to make sure that that tortoise is taken care of beyond not just your lifespan, but that of presumably your friends and family members? And if we are asking these people to take care of our pets, do we want to compensate them in some way? Compensate for the time and energy or the care and expense of taking care of your pets. So with these thoughts kind of percolating at the back of your brain, let's talk about some of the options. Now, the first option, and my least favorite option, is just not to plan at all. Washington State considers your pets to be personal property. You may consider them individuals of your family, but that's the law. And so there are defaults in place and testacy laws that dictate how your property will be distributed if you do not have an estate plan in place. I'm of the view that not making a decision is still making a decision, and I'd rather make my own decision than let somebody else decide what I would have wanted. So I typically don't recommend a lack of estate plan, but that is how your pet will be provided for if nothing has been put on paper. Another alternative is just to say, okay, here's my will. I leave everything to my surviving spouse, my children, a dear friend even. And when I say everything, I mean everything, including my dear pet. And I trust them to take care of Fido or Tigger or Rayo or whomever it is, as well as I would, because I know they love this cat or dog or what have you. And that can be a really simple option if you know that that person really is going to love and take care of your pet as you would. Just take everything. It'll be enough for you, for them, all will be well. The drawback of that, and the drawback of leaving pets as outright gifts in general, is you are simply leaving an outright gift, and they can then go and choose to do whatever they choose to do. So if heaven forbid something happens later on and the circumstances or situation changes, you aren't really in a position to control what then happens after that transfer. And we'll get into that in a little more detail with my next example, which is to make a specific gift. So instead of I leave everything to my sweetheart or whomever, Maybe your sweetheart really doesn't want that pet. Um, they're allergic to cats, they don't like dogs, they have no idea how to take care of a horse, whatever the situation is. Or maybe you decide it's going to be better for your pet to be given to someone who has a higher skill set or more time or what have you. Well, then you can specifically leave a gift of that pet to that person and make sure that you're making that selection thoughtfully. And not only that, maybe you leave a gift of cash to go with that gift of your pet. So as an example, we have Scott, who has a lovely cat named Thor. He's rambunctious, but otherwise in great health. He's got a couple of friends that they think that he thinks would take great care of Thor, that they're thrilled to have him because they think that he's the cutest cat they've ever seen. And maybe Scott leaves an additional gift of a few $1,000s to help cover any lifetime expenses that Thor might have. Cat food, litter, vet bills, replacing whatever curtains Thor may have scratched up in his joyful play of the living room. The leaving of this cash gift outright in your will is a great option in its simplicity. Here you go, easy to write, easy to execute. Go forth and make good decisions. I leave this to you with the intent that you use it to take care of Thor. And if you trust those people to do so, it's just really the simplest option. Now, the catch is, once you've made that gift outright, no strings attached, they can then go and do whatever it is they choose to do, whether that's keep Thor in the lifestyle to which he is accustomed or to the lifestyle that he's now going to become accustomed. You really don't have a ton of control about what happens. Or, as a friend of mine would jokingly say, thank you. I will now take the cat to the animal shelter, leave them with half the cash as a donation, and take the other half. Thank you so much. Now, I'm sure he's joking, but in practice, that can happen. An outright gift, no strings attached. They can go and do whatever they choose to do. So you do want to be thoughtful when you're considering that option. I think that it's often a great choice if you're just leaving a pet or a smaller amount where the complications of a trust may just not be worth it, or you really have that long relationship and that deep trust and you truly have no concerns. This person is going to do the right thing. But you do want to have that conversation. Now, that said, I just mentioned that it's great for smaller amounts, but sometimes a smaller amount might not feel like enough to take care of your pet due to the nature of the situation. For an example, let's say Isaac and Bonnie have a pet dog named Snoopy, and he's got diabetes and requires expensive care. And they worry about what will happen if they die before Snoopy does. Who's going to be able to take care of him, administer medication, keep up with the vet visits, and whatever expenses may go with that? Maybe they do still go with a will. Maybe they leave $10,000 to their dear friends that they've known for decades and they trust absolutely without question. But maybe this is starting to get into that dollar amount where we go, maybe a little more accountability would be useful and would be worth the hassle and the administrative requirements that go into having a trust. Now, as you may recall from prior webinars, if you've seen them before, trusts are a really great tool to exert control about how funds are spent after a person has passed. The idea being that you have a trustee who's in charge of managing the funds, making distributions, filing tax returns when required, all of those sorts of administrative requirements. And then you have a beneficiary who is entitled to benefit from the trust. The amounts are paid for their health, welfare, however the trust is drafted. That's what it's meant to be spent on. So Washington allows us to make pet trusts, interestingly enough, only for vertebrates. So the ant farm can't really help you there, but anything with a vertebrae. And when thinking about setting up a trust for an animal, You want to be thinking about the things we've discussed. How long are they going to live? What kind of care do they need, et cetera. But also, what kind of money are we going to be putting into this trust? How much is going to make sense? Who do we want to appoint as the trustee of that trust? Is this going to be the same person or a different person than the individual or family who's been given charge to take care of your pet, right? Maybe somebody's managing the finances as trustee, but the pet's being taken care of with someone else who's more capable and has the special skills necessary to take care of your horse or your sugar glider or what have you. This can be particularly important, frankly, when you have pets that have long lives. You know, as I mentioned earlier, a tortoise can live to be 150 years. I don't know anyone that's lived to be 150 years old. So having a plan to care for that pet over that time, multiple persons, multiple trustees, and that plan of succession can be very important. Also, frankly, in terms of keeping track of the finances, a trust is going to have higher levels of duty and responsibility, of accounting, all of these really great things that will help to make sure that the funds are accounted for, they're being spent appropriately, and your pet is really being taken care of. And if not, then there will be terms in place to replace the trustee, replace the guardian who's taking care of your pet, et cetera, et cetera. The drawback, of course, to these trusts, as I touched on, is there are administrative requirements. An accounting has to be kept. If the trust balance is high enough that it's producing income, you may have to file income tax returns. And because pets are not humans and people and don't have the ability to file their own tax return, if there is sufficient income, that income is going to be paid at the trust rate instead of the individual rate. And you may or may not be familiar with income tax rates, but an individual is not going to hit the top tax bracket until about $540,000, I think, in 2022. Trust is going to hit that top tax bracket at $13,450, I think. So you'd have to have a trust with a large enough balance where you're generating thousands of dollars of income, but before, you know, that $13,000 of income before you hit 37%, I should say. The filing requirement currently begins at $600 of income, to be clear. But it is something to consider. That being said, frankly, if you have that much money in the trust, it's probably still worth having the trust to keep track of those funds and make sure they're being spent appropriately. Let's see. So where's a pet trust going to make the most sense? As I said, again, if you have a longer lived pet, you know, horses can live for 30 years, African gray parrots can live for 50, 70, something like that. Tortoises live a long time. Where you have these longer lived pets, there can be more concern about tracking the funds, making sure that there are terms in place, provisions in place to provide for people to take care of that pet, but also successors in case the situation is no longer working. And then, you know, pets that have higher needs, whether it's complication due to the nature of their species or their breed, you know, taking care of a Malinois is going to be different than taking care of a German Shepherd. Taking care of a cat is going to be different than taking care of a horse. The more complicated needs might require, or you might desire, Herbie is your dog and your little prince, and he is not going to have anything less than A, B, C, and D. These sorts of things would require the specification and the customization that a trust can provide. So, kind of a short webinar, but one that I get asked more often than you might think. These are the basic options. Again, to recap, not making a plan, which I don't suggest. Leaving your pet in accordance with your will, maybe with a cash gift to help with their support, maybe not. And then, of course, setting up that pet trust and really making a plan for how you want your pet taken care of for the duration of their days. That said, everything is specific to your situation, your goals. The most important thing you can do really is talk to an attorney, tell them what your goals are, what your concerns are, and then we can help you really build the tool that's going to work best for your situation. So if there are any questions, this is a great time to raise your hand. And if not, then I will take that as a sign that I've been thorough and leave you to the rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.